Good morning, viewers at home. Welcome to the program Superdawn. I am Vera Osopo with you this morning.
And starting off on a wonderful Wednesday morning, it's Blessed morning. So good morning, Vera.
Good morning to you, Blessed.
Precious.
Good morning. Because it is a beautiful morning here in the city of Lagos. I am Precious Amayo. Thanks for joining us.
Well, today on this program, we're going to start with the newspaper review segment, and we'll look through some dailies this morning, and you can actually in that segment SMS us. We'll get that and we'll read it out to you. Away from that SMS, we want to look at Ekiti elections, lessons to learn from the last election in Ekiti State, and as we look ahead of 2019 January elections. I know that that election came in and there were loads of anticipation. People had said loads of things concerning that election. Before the election, the Ekiti election, some people said there's going to be war in the town. Some people have said they are moving away. Some have said, well, the governor will still retain his position. But it wasn't so after that election. Loads of things happened, and we're going to discuss it. But we're going to look at the lessons to be learned from that election. We're going to look at the economy, security lessons. We're going to look at the electorate, what you need to take out of that election this morning. Once again, good morning to you. Well, we'll go up right now for our newspaper review segment. But this morning, we're going to just do the headlines. Let's go with that.
Superdawn, your daily live current affairs program where topical issues that border on politics, economy, sport, and sizzling national issues are analyzed. Now holds every Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Superscreen television. Let your voice be heard. Join us.
Welcome back. We'll start with the Punch newspaper this morning, and the first story says 2019 polls to cost 242 billion. Buhari tells National Assembly, and the writer says President at the ICC promises free and fair elections. Precious. The poll costing those 2019 polls to cost 242 billion.
Well, every year there is a budget for elections. In 2011, I think it was 89. In 2015, it was 92.5. Yeah. That's what INEC requested for, but eventually cost about 108 billion naira. But so when you look at it, it's been increasing. It's been on the increase. Hopefully, it will be. The government has not said, look, this is what we're going to use it for.
No, they've said it's for the election and also security.
Security, so but they've not said, oh, this is the part of the election. This is what it goes into. It has to be broken down. We've not seen that. Eventually, maybe when it is broken down, then we will understand better, why it is costing 242 billion naira.
Okay, we also have in the Punch this morning, federal government, Ethiopian airline in talks over national courier. We also have this, my wife and I swam through flood. Unfortunately, my children could not. Katsina victims, that's the flood victims. We also have here, Oshun, 3,439 delegates pick PDP candidates for Saturday. Here in the papers, alleged forgery, no complaints against Adeosun, says police. We have protests as Assembly serve Imo Deputy Governor impeachment notice. Ibejuleki community accuses Lagos State of land grabbing. Metrin, you're wrong. Power distributors reply Fayoshi. Varsity student found dead in well after SARS invaded hostel. And finally, from this paper, it says Osun West reject direct primaries to pick APC governorship candidate. That's all for the Punch this morning. Moving away.
And I'm starting with the New Telegraph paper this morning. On the top of the paper, FG unveils new national carrier today, and the rider reads, Minister meets aircraft makers in UK, domestic airline freight. And also on the New Telegraph this morning, Saraki legislators perfect moves to dump APC. With the riders, Senator Yanko, Buhari's supporters defect to ADC. Otam's absence stores peace talks on Benue crisis. Oshomole pacifies Senate president. Find out on page 2 of the New Telegraph paper this morning. Still on the New Telegraph paper this morning, Buhari budgets 242 billion naira for 2019 elections. Executive legislatures showed an imminent over-variment. Page 4 has that story. Dasuki, court SARS release order on DSS AGF. Page 6 of the New Telegraph has the story. Schools, hospitals, markets shut over Ebonyi Cross River crisis. Page 5 has the story. Protest as flood sweeps away 6-year-old boy. Find out on page 9. And finally, on the New Telegraph paper this morning, why we deny southern leaders landing permit, and that's coming from the Nigerian Air Force. Page 7 has the story. All this and more you will find on the New Telegraph paper this morning.
All right, now moving away from that paper, looking now at the front page of the Daily Trust. The major headline here is still on the 2019 elections. It says 2019, Buhari proposes 242 billion naira for INEC security. You find details of that on page 5. Just below the nameplate, it says Dasuki fulfills bail terms, court serves DSS. You find details on page 3. 7 dead in Ogun flood, 6,000 rendered homeless. You find details of that on page 29. On the bottom strip here, residents protest as flood sweeps child away in Benin. You find details on page 11. APC fixes a new date for Imo congresses. You find details of that on page 14. FIRS collects 7.7 trillion naira in 3 years, records 2.5 trillion naira for first half of the year 2018. Details of that on page 18. And finally, it is the 1,552 days since Chibok schoolgirls were abducted, and that's all for the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper.
Okay, moving away from the Daily Trust, we take some stories in the Nation newspaper this morning, and it says here, President to unveil single window at seaports, airports, border stations. We also have this, banks and ex-CEOs indicted at 720 billion cash disappear. And we have here, Katsina flood death tolls, he's 52. Tinubu, direct primaries will deepen democracy. And we have here, court serves Dasuki's release order on DSS. We'll take this final story here. Government house invaded, Fayoshi tells Iwe the Oba. Well, that's all we can take for the Nation newspaper and this segment this morning. Moving away from the newspaper review segment, we want to look at AKT elections, lessons that we must take home from the election as we approach the 2019 general elections. We'll go on this break, and when we come back, we'll continue with that. Welcome back. We want to look at the Ekiti election, what happened and lessons to be learned from that election. I know that it has come and gone, and some critical stakeholders of democratic projects in Nigeria are watching and had watched that election. And we know that the 2019 elections are around the bend. We want to look at these lessons that will move us into 2019 elections. But we have our guest in the studios today. Is a former executive director of Nigerian American Council, Washington, D.C., and also a politician, Honorable Oke Samuel Mbono. Good morning to you, Honorable.
Good morning, Vera. Good to be here.
Good to see you.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, looking at what happened, let me take you back to not even Ekiti, the 2015 presidential election. It's about 3 years now, over 3 years now, and many factors shaping that narrative of this election. If you look at the defining variables to these elections and what also happened in Ekiti State, what are the lessons you could say that we must take out of that election, the Ekiti election, and looking ahead of 2019?
Yeah, well, based on some of the controversies that are starting to arise, we would expect that INEC particularly would have had a higher level of preparedness, because this is obviously a test for what is coming down in 2019, and we expect that if there are any issues, and already we're hearing from opposing camps about a potential that the votes that were collated may differ in number from the actual registered voters who were accredited to vote in that election. And if that is the case, then that is a sobering reflection that INEC needs to speed up its game and elevate the standard at which it is planning to uphold its role within this democracy in this election. And we as stakeholders are watching very closely, and we anticipate that there might be a little bit of frictions that may need to be resolved on both sides. But all in all, it is a major test case to what's coming, and we're watching that closely by the day.
Because you mentioned INEC, there was a situation in Ekiti where the PDP candidate, Professor Eleka, almost couldn't vote because of the card readers. And then there were some polling booths where there were reports that people had to resort to the manual process of voting because of the card readers. Now, when you look at that situation, with that kind of situation, how do you see it playing out in 2019?
Well, it is a very serious, significant issue, because INEC has had all of this time to get their acts together regarding this coming election. More importantly, this is so close to 2019 that this is a model. This is a model that needs to be watched very closely. And I expect, I and other stakeholders in this political scene will expect that, given the length of time that INEC had to prepare for this, and they couldn't get some of this hitches correct, it's a little bit worrisome. And what we in the political space on all sides of the divide will have to do is to put INEC under a microscope. In my case particularly, I want to put INEC under a global microscope. There won't be any basis for any kind of mediocrity in this election, because Nigeria has come of age, and we do not expect anything less than a high-end delivery of electoral service to the people.
Okay, well, looking at it, because the INEC commissioner in that state said something shortly before, during the build-up of this election, that we have about 299 polling units, the flashpoints of polling units. And some observers have said, giving credit, attributed this violent-free, particularly election in Ekiti State, was because of the deployment of 30,000 policemen. Do you think that was what happened? That's why we didn't hear of killing, box snatching, and the rest of it?
Well, there's a role for security agencies, and apparently the overwhelming presence of those security agencies may have helped contain things a bit, but that is not the total picture. The total picture is that we are examining this election to make sure that there were no intimidation.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to hold you on there. We'll come back to you, but there's a caller here. Hello, good morning, Joseph. Good morning to you.
Hello?
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
We can hear you. Go ahead. Okay, you can continue.
Yes, and so we want to really examine this election to make sure that the massive show of force was not designed to intimidate one side of the political divide in favor of another side, because it is very easy for the incumbent government at the federal center, where the instrumentalities of state power are controlled, to utilize one excuse or the other to beef up security that may undermine a particular candidate. So we need to examine that very, very closely and very, very carefully going into 2019, especially considering the fact that there are pockets of strife and serious violence going on in different sides, different parts of the country that have not been contained sufficiently, and the world is looking on that. So the prioritization of where we deploy our security forces are also very, very important. We want to make sure that there is no overkill in a particular environment because there's some kind of interest. I'm not saying that that has been proven so far, but those are things that we need to watch out for very carefully, especially regarding the elections.
You talked about massive show of force. I mean, isn't that a reflection of the kind of politics that we practice here?
Well, in some ways it could be, but it's not a total ramification of the politics proper, because there are, in a democracy, there's all kinds of civil mechanisms that are built into the average election. And some of those mechanisms are designed to capture any kind of fraud or electoral malpractice without a physical show of force, such as what we saw in Ekiti. And we need to pay attention very closely, because it is the instrumentalities of state power, such as the law enforcement.
I'm going to stop you there again. Papa David. Okay, Papa David, good morning to you. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I'm coming from Orile.
Really? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. It's a very good day for Ekiti election. It was very free and fair election. And for the past years now,
Papa David, I think you need to turn down the volume of your TV set so we can hear you clearly. Yes, go ahead.
And then it was very, very free and fair election. And for the 30,000 police brothers declared, made everything, went to night, free and fair. Everybody was there peacefully. And to the glory of God, even the incumbent governor, apart from all the problems that is going on, God still take control. And the election was very close. For the first time, the incumbent and the running mate, only 19,000 difference. And that was very nice. The election was contested.
So what lessons do you think we need to learn from that elections come 2019?
Right.
Okay, you can go continue.
Okay. Yeah, and so going forward, every aspect of the electoral process in a given democracy such as ours should be watched very closely, because it is the lines between a proper deployment of electoral power through active voting by citizens and the lines for intimidation at this stage of Nigeria's development are actually very thin. And if we take our eyes off the ball on any given aspect of this electoral process, we could find results that are tainted one way or the other. In this case, it appears that ultimate results, show that there's one victor, and it's not a very high margin. Those figures, as long as they are defensible by the evidence of the voting, then that may very well be an election that comes close to credibility. But the physical show of force, the level at which it was displayed, was not, in my view, absolutely necessary. There are covert ways of making sure that security exists without a very massive and intimidatory appearance of a show of force.
Okay, but looking at it, what are the issues that you think would determine 2019 election? Because some people have said that seeing what happened in Ekiti State, this administration might just continue after 4 years. What are those things that will determine the issues that will determine 2019 elections?
Well,
determine it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, 2019 elections being watched very closely, not just within Nigeria, but in international circles. It's probably going to be one of the world's most watched elections because there's a lot of issues that are arising out of Nigeria that are beginning to affect what happens in the international environment. Security, for one thing, is a big deal in any part of the world, and if one region of the world is seen or deemed as insecure, everybody pays attention to see what happens there. And so in 2019, INEC is not going to be just accountable to Nigerians, they're going to be accountable to the world. And any efforts or any conspicuous or inconspicuous attempts to intimidate any part of the political divide, put on the side of the incumbent at the federal level and on the side of incumbents at the state level, those are being watched very, very closely. And besides, there's technology also that is going to be deployed in this particular election that would make a difference in determining where any kind of discrepancies may arise. And a lot of the, some of the political parties, I don't know how well some of the candidates are prepared, but some candidates are very well prepared to monitor closely, not just the votes, but how the votes are recorded.
The outcome. But there's another caller here. Hello, good morning to you.
Good morning, I'm your father.
Okay.
This is election is not a do after election.
Okay.
It's a very bad. What INEC do is a very big loss because of making Nigeria open eye because of this 2019 election.
Okay. Thank you so much for you. Someone else is saying it wasn't a free election. Do you agree with him after seeing what happened?
Well, I would not conclude so quickly that it was not a free election because as a professional, I believe in evidence, and I believe in concrete means of proving that a matter is one way or the other. So merely saying it is not sufficient. We're going to have to look further into the process that gave rise to the result of that election. Part of it is that the two sides in this particular election had an opportunity to actually get their votes to the extent that they can without any form of intimidation. And if there's any evidences, I'm sure that it is being gathered and is being preserved. And so at the end of the day, once these evidences of any potential malpractice is gathered and presented, then that's when we get into that next phase of calling it an election that has not been determined free or fair. But you cannot rule that out completely, though. But the reality is that for me as a professional, both as somebody who was seeing politics from different parts of the world, and somebody who may have an interest eventually in what happens in 2019, I believe that we have an obligation to watch whatever evidence that may come out regarding any kind of malpractice.
Okay, let's look at the parties themselves. There was a fallout within the PDP as a result of the process that selected the flag bearer of that party. Now, what can parties learn from this in terms of how they select, in terms of how they conduct their primaries and how they select their flag bearers?
I would like to answer that, but there's another caller first. Hello, good morning to you.
Hello, good morning, madam.
Good morning.
I'm from a I'm calling from Bagada.
Yes, I think you need to speak up.
Yes, nice speaking with you people. The problem from Ekiti State is an opener to Nigeria because there are so many irregularities. 30,000 policemen is very wrong. Then the general election 2019, calculate 30,000 per each state. How many policemen is too many? That means the federal government is going to employ more policemen to control this state. So they are using the policemen, the security men from the federal to intimidate the opposition, to rig the, because what they are aiming is the 2019 election. This is very wrong. If you take buying for votes with money, they pay money from the polling booth for people to vote. That is, if you my someone that is, if you investigate that very well, even there is a problem from the.
Okay, I think we got that already, but he's saying those policemen being deployed in Ekiti State, they were meant to harass people or intimidate people. Yes, I get that. Intimidate people. Yes, you can continue with the question.
Yeah. Well, the thing that may be worrisome about the heavy police presence in this last election is that the outcome that is desired of securing the votes and maintaining a secure environment may not necessarily require a massive show of force such as what we saw in Ekiti. It could have been accomplished with a lot less. When you now begin to show make a show of force in an overwhelming manner, it begins to rise to the level that there might be some other sinister motive, especially when the same outcome can be accomplished with less. So that's a real life issue. But what I would be concerned about ultimately as a professional, as a politician of international regard, is that I look for evidence.
Before you conclude.
Yes.
But she asked a question now. You asked a question now.
How parties conduct their primaries and select their flag bearers.
Yeah. Well, one of the direction that the Nigerian democracy is going to get to ultimately, I anticipate, will be that of an open primary, because the whole idea that a certain number of people can be elected as delegates for a party to vote on a primary is not really grounded in international democratic practice, because it is subject to abuse. And so right now, I am not personally satisfied with the process that which certain parties used to build up to the main elections, to the primary. As far as the primary process, it requires urgent reform in Nigeria, as a matter of fact, for us to really advance democracy to a point where...
What would you like to see?
I'd like to see an open primary, where every current member of any party can vote freely in a primary.
Okay, looking at where you're coming from, you were the former executive director for Nigerian American Council, Washington, D.C. And you were also one time Nigerian spokesperson for Washington, D.C. But looking at the experience, we are a developing country. And looking at where you're coming from, do you think we're of age when we say democracy in Nigeria? And I think I'll ask two questions in one. And do you think we have someone that can really, if we say we want someone to unseat this administration, do we think we have people credible to do that? what you saw in Ekiti State. So both, I think you need to answer both questions.
Yeah, well, in general, I think, to take the first part of the question, yes. In general, I think Nigeria is moving ahead. It's moving ahead, not exactly where we should be, but the level of enlightenment is rising, and the level of understanding that this country belongs to all of us. This country doesn't belong to a few people, maybe 200-300 people, elites that might be sitting in Abuja somewhere, or that might be from a particular region of the country. Everybody in this country is a first-class citizen of this country, and we own this space completely without any equivocation. And so, having said that, the responsibility for the democratic governance of the country actually falls on all of us, whereby we have an obligation to all register and take stake in who we entrust our lives to for the next 4 years, as is going to happen in 2019. And having said that, that means that the voters card is an essential part of citizenship, because that's what's going to empower us to do what we need to do. And then at the level of the actual candidates that are readying themselves for 2019, of which fortunately happen to be one of them, I think that the opportunity for excellence is presenting itself, because so much mediocrity in leadership has held this country down for the past few years, maybe a little longer, but actually it's much more apparent since the past 3.5 to 4 years that this country must rise beyond where it is now. This level of mediocrity in national leadership will drag all of us down. And if Nigeria is going to advance to the 21st century and be a force to be reckoned with a living standard that equals that of many advanced countries, and with insecurity being completely contained, then we have to prepare ourselves to elevate the leadership. And to elevate the leadership means that we need to call back or pull back people who hold national leadership that have not been able to perform to a level where all of us feel that the nation is moving forward. And that is where I come in particularly, because to run a complex country like Nigeria, you require a certain level of understanding of diversity of people, diversity among nations, because you have to tap from the best. You don't necessarily arrange your clansmen around yourself because the clansmen that you drink tea with, and you think that that's what it takes to run a nation. To run a complex nation, you bring the best of everyone. And the diversity itself is a strength, because it allows each person to think a little differently, and then is summed up in a hybrid policy that can now cater to everyone in the country.
Honorable, if I may come in there, you talked about, it being a collective effort if we were to change Nigeria, and then, civic responsibility. Mm-hmm. But the general mentality here in the country is, look, my vote doesn't count, so I'm not going to do anything about it. And then with the reports of the money inducement, in Ekiti State, mm-hmm. what do you think would be the behavioral effect of that on the part of the electorate towards the 2019 election?
Yeah, well, I would like to say with a certain level of authority that the votes are going to count this time. And so let us not, or let nobody think that, oh, well, it's not going to count because it didn't count in the past. All our votes are going to count, because there is technology that exists today for any serious candidate, especially at the presidential level, to be able to not just mobilize their votes, but to watch their votes. And I don't think anybody who is worth their salt would invest resources to rig when that same election is going to be overturned, because any attempt to compromise this election must lead to elections in particular regions or wherever it is that it was compromised to be overturned. Nigeria now has records of actual elections that were overturned against the people who actually may have rigged elections and a rightful winner installed. And so it is not going to be business as usual. The technology exists today. I'm certainly fully aware of the technology that exists to actually track the votes. We're going to invest in resources such as the agents of each candidate or each party that are going to watch those votes in every single polling center in Nigeria. And once we have done that part, once we have gotten our PVCs and voted, and we and other candidates would now take care of watching those votes. And once we have done that, it is not going to be a walk in the park for anyone to think that they can rig this election. It's an election also that is going to be watched by the international community like no other, because there's a lot at stake. It's either Nigeria, it's moving forward or it's moving backwards. And if it's moving backwards and we all want to go back to the Stone Age, then we all have to have a say in the matter. It'll be one thing if 180 million of us or 200 million of us say, well, we don't like the good things of life anymore. We don't like electricity. We don't like to have good roads, communications infrastructure. We want to go back to Stone Age and live in caves. If we all say that, then that's fine. But I know that Nigerians are not in that mode. Nigerians in a forward-thinking mode. We cannot be going back to leaders from the 20th century. We need leaders for the 21st century, such as myself, with worldly credentials. And once we get this done, then you will not recognize Nigeria in another 4 to 6 years, because it takes ideas and vision and knowledge and competence to drive a nation. You know, the fact that anybody has been in politics in Nigeria over the past 40 years, a person grew up in the oil economy, that is all ancient history. What counts today is the intellectual capacity. You know, the modern economy. You
say that, you know, we need ideas, we need innovation. Innovation and reforms. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the general discourse within, you know, on social media, even just on the street, mm-hmm. as much as people want reforms, mm-hmm. but it also looks like there is this attitude of, look, I am numb. Nigerians are becoming numb, mm-hmm. you know, to how politics is played here. Mm-hmm. You know, what would you say to that?
Well, they cannot. It's too. Sometimes it's darkest.
Maybe because they've given up, so continue.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's darkest before the dawn. And what we are about to witness in 2019 is the dawn of a new Nigeria. So I would say that people should not be any more disillusioned that they have been before. People are going to see a new set of candidates, unlike what they have seen before. The recycling is just about to be over, and we want all Nigerians to keep their eyes on the prize, because the worst thing anyone can do is to have, not participating fully. It's like accepting defeat before the battle. And one of the unwisest things anyone could do is to accept defeat before a battle. We have to gear up our sleeves, roll up our shoes and get out there with the confidence that a new Nigeria is about to arise. And I think that a lot of youth are also recognizing that, because it's not going to be anymore about some politician coming from Abuja and throwing cash around. I would say if people throw around the stolen monies that they have acquired, which belongs to all of us anyway, you can take it, buy yourself a drink, but you're still going to have to vote for what it takes to propel Nigeria forward. And people will know and see the differences between some of the newer candidates, such as myself, and the recycled political status quo. Because the status quo does not have anything else to give. They have given all they have. Okay,
looking at the economy, because the economy will be another critical issue we need to look at for, especially right now in Nigeria, it's still, we're still suffering from corruption. We're still suffering from getting things even to eat in Nigeria. People are still wondering, why are things this way? And this administration will always tell us that it's because when they came in, the treasury was almost empty. But looking at all of these things and the economy, do you think if you're given an opportunity, say you want to be Mr. President of this country, what will you be looking at? What would be your focus for Nigeria? And again, what are those leadership qualities the electorate need to see in the person for them to say, hey, this is the man we want as a president?
Yeah, well, what we have seen, just to backtrack a little bit, from the national government today, and many state governments for that matter, is an excuse-laden governance. Excuses, the oil price was this, the Libyans bring guns here, and all manner of excuses, and that is not leadership. Leadership is you take stock and you take charge of the responsibility that you have. And as you take that, you begin to execute your programs, and if you fail, the responsibility is yours. You take the blame for failing. If you succeed, of course, the whole world sees. And so what has been happening is that because of the lack of vision, many things that would have grown this economy to a level where it can begin to compete with most countries in Europe have not been done because of lack of vision. What do you mean by
lack of vision?
Okay.
Because we had all of the agenda before someone says they want to come in. So what do you mean lack of vision? Okay,
well, let me speak about the kind of programs that we are planning to execute if we take the reins of government in this country in the future, hopefully in 2019, is that one of the first things that is a problem that is holding this country down right now is insecurity. Now, it doesn't matter that insecurity is happening somewhere in Plateau or in Benue or in Taraba, as was reported recently with all the killings. In the eyes of the world, what they see is insecurity in Nigeria. And capital is a coward. Investors are cowards. Nobody's going to invest their money where they run the risk of lives and limb being chopped off or being killed. Nobody's going to do that. So the first thing we do is we'll have the political will to take charge of the security situation. And what is not happening is that we're not seeing the leadership of the country showing that they have the political will, because if it happens one time, it's probably some kind of an emergency. 2 times, 3 times is a pattern. And so that means that somebody is deciding directly or indirectly, by acting or by failure to act, not to pay the kind of attention that needs to be paid to security. And so that is the number one thing. Now, once we take care of security, our economy, it will translate back into the economy, because investors will pour through the doors of this country. The second part is that we have to take care of our electric energy and communications infrastructure, because there is no way you can build a 21st century economy on 4 or 5 hours of electricity and then everybody else buys their own power. You cannot grow an economy that way. So once we improve the economy, the electricity infrastructure of Nigeria to 20 or 24 hours, which we have the capacity, my administration, if I get into office in 2010, have the capacity to do that in 2.5 years, we will see this economy not double, not triple, but quadruple. This economy would quadruple in about 2 years, whereby investors will be beating down the door to this republic. We have the numbers, we have resourceful people, we are some of the hardest working people in the world who compete very favorably when they go outside Nigeria. And so we know that this is a critical area that needs to be taken care of. And by the way, the electric energy infrastructure also is tied to the communications infrastructure, because the rest of the world moves at the speed of light. If you have your smartphone and your device, you should be able to get any information you want to get at the speed of light in about 2 seconds. In places that I have been, in places that I have done things in, that's how everybody operates. Now, the fact that the communications infrastructure in Nigeria is slow and unreliable the way it is actually holding the country down. It's holding
I would have to comment comment, because I mean, all of these things you're saying sound really beautiful, and I'm sure Nigerians now are saying, look, I've heard this before, and you know, come when from August where you know the whole electoral timetable begins, well, Nigerians will hear a lot of all of this. I mean, shouldn't Nigerians also be looking at issues of track record?
Well, okay. That's a very important observation. Well, and that is really where...
As we wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, that will be where people like myself distinguish themselves, because I have not been part of the status quo in Nigeria, and what I have done is perform at an international level in a place where the standards are much more rigorous. And if I was able to operate at the role that I did when I was in the United States before I became Executive Director of the Nigerian American Council, I actually served as a Commissioner for Housing and Community Development in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. So I bring credentials that no Nigerian leader has ever been tested on. And when I say that I'm going to do something, is because we have researched everything. We have looked at all the models, and we know what is possible. The only thing holding Nigeria down is the leadership at the national level.
Okay, in wrapping up this, because we must go now, in wrapping up this, what word do you have for the electorate right now?
Well, I would say the electorate should be on the lookout. It's a new day that is coming in Nigeria. You are going to see a crop of some candidates that are totally different from what you've ever seen before. At the national level, you're going to be seeing myself, and we are on the verge of creating a new Nigeria. A new Nigeria is about to emerge. New leadership with worldly credentials that will make the difference on what Nigeria has ever witnessed by way of leadership.
I want to thank Honorable K. Samuel Mbono. He was the former Executive Director, Nigerian American Council, Washington, D.C., and it's also coming up. Well, we'll get to hear that, you know, and I know that Nigeria is a place where people would like to cast their votes. But we'll watch it then as it unfolds. We're going to give you more information on that. But I want to thank you for coming on this segment of the program. We invite you someday again so that you can come and give us tips on how we can cast our votes come 2019.
I look forward to it.
We'll go on this break now, and we have a guest joining us up for this same segment. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Superdawn, your daily live current affairs program where topical issues that border on politics, economy, sport, and sizzling national issues are analyzed. Now holds every Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Superscreen television. Let your voice be heard. Join us.
Welcome back. We have our second guest in the studios. We have a public affairs analyst, Darlington Agomo. It's also a legal practitioner. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Vera, and good morning, viewers.
Well, we're looking at lessons to be learned from that last Ekiti governorship election. So what do you think are these lessons as we look ahead to 2019 elections? What are the lessons to pick up from that election?
You know, the greatest tragedy of the Nigerian political landscape or Nigerian politicians is that they fail to learn. I was thinking that with what APC promised Nigerians and with their mantra about anti-corruption, integrity, I was expecting something more decent, but it wasn't so. It wasn't so, even if we tried to package our country before the international community. But they were here. You can see their verdicts that the thing is far below international standard and best practice. And these are international observers. You cannot come and be, trying to repackage it, trying to defend the contract. Look, when something is bad, it is bad. My question is, where was it so much furor about Ekiti? It's like APC wanted Ekiti at all costs. That was why everything was deployed, Everything was deployed to make sure they get Ekiti. And that is not the people's will. So it's so sad, it's so sad.
Talking about the elections, when you look at that election, 35 parties fielded candidates for that election.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, we're here talking about APC and PDP.
Yeah.
What does that say about the argument that, look, Nigeria should just stay with the two-party system?
You see, there are things that the society cannot help. It evolves. If you look at US very well, where we copied this democracy, it has always been two dominant parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. What happened, or why it seems these two parties are dominant, is because they are the only ones who have tested power at the federal level. And for that reasons, they must have positioned themselves. They have that outreach. They have the resources to organize branches, organize the people, and with appointments, which they always share among themselves whenever they get into office. So all these things have helped to position them, put them in a position whereby they can be able to influence the people and influence opinion. And that's just the only reason. It happened in PDP. It's not happening in APC. You can see the appointment of Buhari. I can't remember any PDP man who is in this government. It's not possible.
Okay, but you're not sounding happy with the result of the Ekiti elections, where lots of people have said that it was a fair election.
It was
a fair election, a free one and a fair one.
No.
It was a credible election.
No,
you have a different opinion.
No, but look, I have an NGO, Citizens Against Double Standard, which I run. And I remember that some people went, and the report wasn't palatable. The domestic and international observers have already told you that this election in Ekiti fell short of international standard. That is the verdict. They have to be diplomatic. In fact, they came short of saying this election cannot stand, that they should do it again and all that. But you even with the social media, let's assume social media can be very funny. But we saw credible pictures of security agents shooting, you know, ballot box, with all these policemen. We saw people carrying ballot boxes, and what kind of election is that? In open before the public, openly. People. So how can such things go on? And you still want to give the election credibility? That is what we are talking about. If APC want to win it, let them win it in a decent manner. Because right now, PDP is contesting the election. Because they said, you know, after the voting, they always count the results. Yes. And so all the party agents were present. So PDP agents were always there, and they were taking snapshot of the result from all the polling units. And they are not telling you that the result they saw, which they collected from the polling booth, is not the same thing that was announced. That is where the problem is.
Beyond the results, you know, at the polling unit and the one that was announced, one of the reports that came out, you know, and we also talked about this earlier, is the issue of money inducement, you know, where they were said both parties, or both the ruling party and the PDP were giving, you know, money to electorate at the polling unit. Now, doesn't that make a case for the fact that, look, we're practicing some kind of money politics here, and wouldn't that also play out in the 2019 election? It is obvious.
It is obvious. And that is what, you know, I told people when they said Nigeria have no money or not, I said, no, the money we have will come out during the election. All these politicians, they have amassed so much wealth waiting for this election. For example, look at it this way. How was the Fayemi's election sponsored? I didn't see any cash movement within the Southwest. Lagos used to be the capital of APC. Lagos always, you know, bring out cash because of their.
Okay, you know, I'm going to hold you on there.
But here, there was no such thing. So where did
Mr. Darlington, I'll hold you on there. There's a caller. Chuko, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes.
Yeah, please, I want to say that if the election is telling all Nigerians what APC is saying about the corruption. So if you look at what happened, you will agree with me that they want to take a state by all costs. So I want every Nigerian to be aware that whenever they are saying they are fighting corruption, they are not fighting corruption. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, you see, that is one of the danger. The people that sponsored you, the man that sponsored you, what was his intention? Remember, and that is why I told you that we don't learn any lesson. Remember in Benue, this was the same way Governor Autumn was, you know, pampered, and, you know, he was giving everything, and he won Benue. And every morning or every week, he's always going to Abuja to go and greet somebody. And then he was almost, I don't know, the extension of Benue State government was in Abuja. And he didn't know that he was selling his birthright until these people now got his soul, got his mind, got everything about him, and entered the Benue and started what they are doing there. I am foreseeing such a thing because I keep asking myself, what is particular about Ekiti? If you look at the strategic position of Ekiti, Ekiti is surrounded by 4 other southwest states: Osun, Ondo, Oyo, you know, just around there.
Know that Ekiti is PDP state.
Good. Is like at the center of southwest. Now, if anybody want to get Ekiti, that person has a plan, and the plan may not manifest now. That is why I was wondering, because right now, Fayemi does not even defer to any Southwest leader. So where does his allegiance, where does his respect lie? If the respect and allegiance is outside the Southwest, then there is a problem. I don't see him.
Just a comment.
Yes.
You said that it is about there's something special about Ekiti.
Yes, that is.
At the end of the day, it's politics. Every party isn't the idea that, look, every party wants to have more states to make them the leading party? Isn't that the idea?
Now,
let's take this party, this state from this party.
From what we have now, it is no longer about politics. So
it's about what?
Look, my dear, look at the handwriting on the wall. This thing is not about party or more states. You got what I'm saying? If it is, then you cannot see this kind of mayhem. Why would anybody allow a set of people to go to Benue, clear the whole people in the village, and rename that village?
Are you saying that the administration allowed that? Well, we'll come back to that. We'll go on this break, and when we come back, I want to hear from you. Are you saying this administration, led by President Muhammad Buhari, will allow people, kill freely like that? But let's go on the break. We'll be right back.
Superdawn, your daily live current affairs program where topical issues that border on politics, economy, sport, and sizzling national issues are analyzed, now holds every Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Superscreen television. Let your voice be heard. Join us.
Welcome back. Well, we're still looking at Ekiti elections, lessons that we need to take out of that elections, because less than, say, 7 months more, we will enter the 2019 general election. So, Mr. Darlington, we're looking at what happened, and I asked you before, do you think this administration will intentionally allow killing in Nigeria? Because of your comment.
Nobody, no government will come and tell you that he supports killing in any form. No government. But they say action speaks louder than words. Do you know what happened in Sudan? Why al-Bashir is a wanted man today by ICC during the Sudanese crisis? It is because the man was there while the Janjaweed militia were killing. That was the only reason. Nobody said that al-Bashir was seen carrying gun and shooting his people. No. It is because the primary objective of any government anywhere is to protect life and property. So when you deliberately refuse to carry out this function, then what language are you sending out? What language? More so, when the same government stopped IPOB, when the same government stopped El Zazaki and the Shiite Muslim sect. So what are you not saying? Why is it that these other people? It looks
like we are veering off, veering off the
No, we are not. What is it? She asked me a question. What I'm asking is not killing per se. What we are saying,
because of what you said.
Yes, not killing per se, but because of the passive reluctance to do something.
Is it that some people are just angry that election went that way? But we must look at the essence of that election it was a litmus test for the 2019 elections. We must look at what we can take out of the elections as that it will help us in 2019 general election. But there's the last caller here. Anthony, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you?
Morning.
Beautiful, go ahead.
Good morning, how are you?
We are hearing you. Good
Hello?
Morning.
Hello?
We are hearing
you.
Good
morning.
Morning.
How are you?
It's all right.
Beautiful.
I want to contribute to that, to the man. The man is saying the truth. He's saying the truth, pure truth. But if Nigeria can take the truth, if you hear what the man is saying, there's a meaning to it. Sir, I say, well done, sir. Well done, sir.
Thank you, my brother.
Consider that the reason why they want equity by force is to get rid of, he was sponsored by somebody. Go and take equity. And you know that equity are nearly farmer. And they deal with cash crops like yam. That is one thing. Number two, the sponsoring is for this northern agriculture. If you look at it very well. So it is to me, that is not the election.
Okay, thank you so much. You don't have much. We're wrapping up your last question.
Yes.
No.
Thank you, Anthony. We need to wrap up now.
Just to ask this question, because the president has now sent a letter to the National Assembly requesting for 242 billion naira for the 2019 election. Yeah. Now, if you break that down, in February we had
for the election and security.
Yeah, security. If you break that down, in February we had approximately 74 million registered voters. Divide that by 242 means that per registered voter we're spending 3,215 naira, and then per state we're spending 6.5 billion naira, including the Federal Capital Territory. Now, what's your reaction to all of these figures?
My dear, leave the figures. That is not the money they are going to spend in that election. That is the official, as far as I'm concerned. The unofficial is 10 times higher than the official. The money they were taking to buy votes and all that, who budgeted for that one? Where is that one? Can anybody account for that? You can see. So don't look at what they are, the election will cost far, far higher. That's just the truth. This one is just to say that, yes, something was done. On paper, correct. In reality, no, it's not possible. They spend more money. After all, one of the candidates said that it was his money that gave him the votes. One of the candidates said it. It was the money, and it was obvious. So what are you now telling me? That I should go to bank with that figure? It's not possible. Nigerians don't deal with, we don't have financial prudence as far as governance is concerned. We don't.
Okay, we must wrap up now, but looking ahead of 2019 elections, what do you think Nigerians, the electorate citizens need to do, politicians also? You know what do you think we all need to do right now? I am so
sad that APC that told us they have integrity, they are fighting corruption, this could happen under them. You know, when it happened in Ondo and Edo State, we didn't bother, we didn't, because PDP did not put up more resistance and all that. We saw what happened in Edo. In fact, the election was almost lost in Edo until they had to postpone the election so that they can go and mobilize more funds. That was where this boat buying started, mostly, you know, in Edo. When Oshomole discovered so what I'm saying now is that we have not learned, in fact, we have not moved forward. I was thinking that APC will deepen our democracy with what happened in Ekiti. You can see now that we are moving backwards. With the verdict of the international community, Nigeria has been rubbished, seriously. So if they could go this far in Ekiti, imagine what will happen at the federal level.
So what should we go with?
What we should go with the people. Look, let me tell you,
electorate.
My dear, let me tell you, don't deceive yourself. Your votes will no longer count here.
So you're saying they shouldn't come out and cast their votes?
They should not come out. They should come out. But, you know, people should insist on doing the right thing. If they can resist receiving money, but they cannot resist it. They have first impoverished you. They have made, Nigeria is now has overtaken India in poverty level. You think that was a mistake? No, it was deliberate. Because when they impoverish the people, they won't have the guts. They won't have the to resist the confidence. So that was why.
Okay, I have
so to think, the 2019 election, I don't see anything coming better.
Thank you so much, Mr. Darlington Agomo, public affairs analyst and also a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this segment.
Thank you, my dear.
Well, up next is Superdawn Sports. We'll be right back.